And welcome back into another episode of the Calling It How I See It Sports Pod. It's a big day today. We got a double Twitter space planned. Jack Caglione is a big leaguer. The Royals have called their top prospect up to the major leagues. They made the official roster move today. Of course, the news broke last night when Jeff Passan tweeted it, but the Royals actually didn't need to make the move official until tomorrow because they don't play today, but they made it official today, selecting his contract. They had a spot open on the 40-man roster, so he's now on the big league club. Dairon Blanco was optioned to make room for him. So we're going to delve into that. We're going to talk about the broader roster implications, but spend most of the time on Jack Caglione. First up, you guys saw him on here about a month ago as we talked about the start to the Royals season. Real excited to be joined by David Lesky of Inside the Crown. He's been a busy guy today. He's going on with Sports Radio 810 with my guy Surin Petro in about an hour. So it's a lot going on today, huh, David?
Helps by unmute, doesn't it? Yeah, lot to discuss, and it's all about one dude, right? I mean, he's
pretty much. So let's start off by just talking about some context here, because as I've talked about this with friends and family and more casual baseball fans so far this year, a lot of especially Royals fans are maybe a little scarred by the days of I've had a couple different people whenever I've talked about, oh, it'll be this year. It's just a matter of when and what do we expect from him. And, a lot of casual fans are like, oh, boy, Allard Baird all over again, Russian Zach Greinke, Russian Jimmy Gobble, whoever in the world else he rushed to the major leagues. But in context, that's not supported by what other teams are doing. You don't want to make your decisions based on what other teams are doing necessarily, but it's become pretty standard practice for guys who are drafted, especially out of college, and who hit the ground running to make their debuts pretty quick. Wyatt Langford and Dylan Cruz really come to mind is where it kind of all started. They were early top of the first round 2023 draft picks. Cruz made it to Washington last year. In fact, Langford opened the season on the Rangers roster, if I remember correctly, last year. And then in the last year's draft, Caglione's the fourth guy of the 2024 draft picks to make his debut. You got some weird stuff going on there. Nick Kurtz is the most recent one to make his debut. He was actually the only guy picked ahead of Caglione who's made his debut. Ryan Johnson of the Angels was a late second, almost a third round pick. He also opened the season a pitcher on the Angels roster this year. And so there's a lot of recent precedent for a guy to make his debut this early. Before we get into what to actually expect from Caglione, like, where do you think he fits into all that circle? And is it desperation, or is it just the new era of baseball that we're in is why we're seeing this as a trend?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I don't think any Angels player counts.
That's true. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they just promoted a guy who is playing in a sixth grade game tomorrow. So they may not be the best example, but yeah, I mean, guys are coming up quicker than ever. College is not always, but for some guys, a pseudo minor league, and especially SEC schools, Florida, LSU, where Cruz was.
They got more technology than the minor league teams half the time. Like
some of the clubhouses are bonkers compared to minor league clubhouses. So yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of that aspect that sometimes it's just you're more ready than they used to be from college, and you don't see high school guys doing it. But Caglione, I think, is maybe more, other than Johnson. I think, well, I guess Cam Smith too. I mean, maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong that he's more surprising than some of the others, because I feel like he had very real holes in his game. Not bad. It's okay to have holes. I mean, let's be real here. These are not finished products when they come out of college. But and I think a lot of this was because of splitting time between pitching and hitting. His offensive game wasn't refined yet. He had massive power, made a ton of contact, but he swung and missed. He didn't strike out a ton in college. He walked a good amount. His I guess it was a junior year. It wasn't a senior year. It was third year at Florida. But I mean, there were questions about his game and how it would translate to the big league levels. It's a little bit surprising, but at the same time, to your question, is this desperation or not? I think the answer is yes, it is. But it's also desperation that is earned, because he knocked down the door. I mean, the numbers are what they are, and they're eye popping. Honestly, I mean, you look. overall 322, 389, 593. Crazy. He had a 723 slugging percentage in AAA. A lot of that's because he played the first week of 2 were in Salt Lake City.
Right.
That helps. I mean, he wasn't quite as good in Omaha. Not that he was bad by any stretch, but 286, 385, 476. But 5 strikeouts, 4 walks. Yeah, that works. That's fine. Even in the week in Omaha, his strikeout percentage was below 20%. His walk percentage was what's 14, 15%, something like that. Just looking at the raw numbers, trying to do the math in my head. So he earned his promotion, and while I do think that there's some desperation there, it's desperation with a player who deserved it. It's not like he was sitting in AAA hitting 240, 296, 412. You know,
Mm-hmm. Right.
he was hitting the cover off the ball. So it's a need for the team, but also the player fits the need perfectly. And the other thing too, if you watch some of these games, even on just game day in Omaha, you could see a very real path to him not getting anything to hit in weeks, in day, in a full week of games, he'd get like 3 pitches to hit. I could see that happening real soon. And at that point, the Royals would have to say, look, we don't want to call him up, but he can't develop when he's getting 3 pitches to hit per week. So here he is.
Yep. And that is the line that I've used for a lot of people, whether they're talking about, remembering sins of the past or just worried about his development. It's like, really nobody comes to the major leagues at their peak, at what they're going to be ultimately. That they have to go through adjustment periods at the majors. So I think there is a lot to that. Let's talk about just how he fits into this current roster, because the players could not be more different, both in terms of their body types, their offensive profiles. But maybe it's recency bias, but I keep coming back to something that our guy Petro liked to say, that it's one of those things that's really hard to put a true number on and quantify, like how much of it is that versus how much of it is his approach. You've talked a lot about Jonathan India's approach, but we'll start off with some of the potential downsides here. I do see a bit of a potential cautionary tale with Jonathan India here, because now he was an established major leaguer, so there's only so much you can compare here. But the Royals acquired him because they needed a leadoff hitter. They needed OBP. And they decided, well, we'll figure out the rest of it later. We'll figure out where he plays later. Caglione, because like you said, was actually a two-way player who was a pitcher in college. And, nobody looks at him and sees an outfielder. It's pretty much a brand new experience for him. And, he I went and saw him in Springfield when Northwest Arkansas played him. He seemed to make every play out there. I haven't really heard any, bloopers, not in terms of a baseball hit, but in terms of a low light, for him in the outfield. But they are very much calling him up because, sort of like India, they need him in the lineup. They need power. They need to upgrade their offense. And, obviously they're going to give him plenty of reps in the outfield. I'm sure he'll play some first and DH as well, but they're figuring out that stuff later. Petro likes to say, you can't prove that it didn't affect Jonathan India's bat, the lack of plan they had in the full picture. Do you worry about any of that with Caglione?
I think you worry in that it's the unknown. One thing about Caglione, and there is no way to prove this, so anybody can say anything, but I've heard from a couple of people who believed that had Caglione not pitched, he would have been an outfielder. And the reason he played first base was because he's pitching, and we all know that when you pitch, you play first base. That's
right.
That's how it works in high school, and then most guys just don't do it both beyond high school. And so, again, there's no way to prove that until a Florida coach comes out and says, yeah, he would have played right field for us. I don't know, but he clearly is athletic enough to do it. He's got the arm to do it. I mean, his arm is not well at first base.
Right.
Not that you worry too much about it. He's supposed to be a really good first baseman too. But so I think that's a part of it. But that said, he never did it because he did pitch. And I do think that there's a worry because it's the unknown. And like I said, and I don't know that we'll know the answer. I think that you, in a lot of ways, have to trust the organization that they feel confident, but it's also fair to be a little skeptical. Why would I trust the organization when Jonathan India has not been great? I mean, he has turned things around quite a bit. So I don't he's getting on base at least, but of
Right,
course he's
right.
also now playing second base. So I don't know how much of that plays in there, but um, I think that there are any player could theoretically have a problem doing this, and any player could theoretically be fine doing it. And I'm looking at the game logs right now. He's played left field twice, 1 for 5 in both, homered in one of them. He's played right field, what is it, 12 times, 13 times, whatever it is. 3 for 4, 1 for 4, 2 for 5, 2 for 5, 1 for 4, 1 for 3. I don't know. I mean, I think that some players can do it, some players can't. We don't know if Jack can or can't. In the minors, he was okay doing it. So, does that mean he'll be okay in the majors? We'll find out. But again, it's the unknown, which is tough to stomach the unknown because we like to know things. But I tend to not worry as much about that, but I also understand why some people would.
Well, and I think at least for me, bigger than the unquantifiable of like how much does the uncertainty on defense affect his hitting. I think the thing for me that becomes the most frustrating part of it is they, whether you want to say the call up was because of the outfield situation or just the lack of offense, but the whole reason we're doing all this is because they haven't been able to develop outfielders. That's where the frustration comes back. I think for some people is that, it's one thing, to call him up and just say we're going to stick him at DH. But I think they're asking him to be saviors on multiple fronts here that, not only save us because our lineup's not been good, but we still don't really have the corner outfield spots figured out. So let's see what you can do there. That's the part that worries me. Let's delve into the Super 2 discussion, because that was what became more and more discussed as, he continued to light the world on fire in Omaha. Let's talk about, because I don't think, I don't think the Super 2, maybe you disagree, feel free, but, I don't think the Super 2 is necessarily a reason to keep a guy down that you think is ready and that you need, because, I always like to come back to Alex Gordon with this. Like, Alex Gordon was a Super 2, but because he hadn't had success, he made I think it was just over $1 million in his Super 2 arbitration year. The only way that Caglione cashes in big time on potentially being a Super 2, the thing is, we're not going to know for sure for a while because the dates move around every year. The only way that he really cashes in on it is the Royals are going to be happy to do it because it means he's going to be a really good player. But, I'm curious, do you think it was, again, is that desperation that caused the Royals to call him up when he likely will qualify for it? Is it something to do with just, they made the calculation that, if it doesn't work, we're not going to have to pay him a whole lot extra. And if it does, then we're going to be happy to do it. So they just decided the benefit outweighed the cost there. What do you think went into the Royals specifically, like JJ Piccolo and those guys' thought process in that? Because if we're talking about it, they of course talked about it.
Yeah,
So.
I don't think they were too worried about it. Because as you said, if it doesn't work, he probably goes back down. And we're again, like you said, we don't know the date. We don't know the date yet. The projected date, I forgot what it was. It was like June 8th,
12 maybe,
somewhere in there. So you figure, okay, you get to June 15th, you're fine. My original date that I said for Caglione was June 24th. That's kind of part of what made me think of it as, all right, June 24th is 100%
wait,
due date.
yeah.
But I all you have to do is send him down for 20 days.
Right.
But B, you're right. If he stays in the majors and is just whatever, okay, you're probably not spending a ton of money. And if he's great, yeah, it's going to cost you because two things. One, you have one more arbitration year. And two, ARB 3 and ARB 4 can both be compared against free agent salaries in terms of arbitration. So that's where it gets a little bit different is that the first year and second year, you are only comparing yourself to other arbitration players. Whereas year 3 on a typical arbitration scale, you can compare yourself to everybody. In front of the arbiter, and year 4 is also that too. So he can theoretically get more in the penultimate year of arbitration than he would have otherwise as well. But how much more? I don't know. I actually started digging into it, and I'm kind of finding it's a few million total, which look, a few million is a lot of money. I would be in trouble if I had to pay a few million extra for something, but a baseball team's not. I mean, especially if he's that good. And the other thing too, what is the history? And this does change if he takes to right field and ends up as a right fielder and not a first baseman. But look at the history of first base contracts.
Yeah.
What's he going to make? It's not a huge amount of money. Look, Pete Alonso, Florida fellow,
Yep.
he went out on the free agent market and got, what did he get?
Kind of smacked down is what he got.
Yeah. I'm looking right now at some first base contracts. Yeah, 500 million.
That's nuts. I don't know what.
Honestly, I think that's a bad contract.
Yeah.
In my opinion. But like Matt Olson, 8 years and 168 million. If Jack Caglione is that good, the Royals will pay that. And they showed it with Bobby Witt. Freddie Freeman, 6 and 162. Yeah. Okay. I mean, 27 million a year. That's a lot of money, but I think that they could swing that, especially with, not to get into a huge new topic, but new stadium revenue. And then you look at some of the others. Christian Walker, and 33 years old, he got 20 million a year. Yeah, I mean, you're not looking at huge money for a first baseman. Now, again, that changes if he does take to right field. I mean, then you start to talk about, okay, it's 35 million, 30 million, 25 million, which I guess is the same, as talking about at first base, but you're not going to get, but probably not the Juan Soto contract. Although I guess he wouldn't be a free agent until he was 29, which you look at that, 20 million, 22 million. So I don't know that a player like him, unless he becomes Aaron Judge, is going to cost that. I mean, it's going to cost a lot of money, but it's not going to be the mega contract that we're starting to see, unless he becomes, again, Aaron Judge or Juan Soto or that. And if he does, that's awesome. Awesome for him for 6.5 years. I don't know how much that plays into it. I don't think that they were really too worried about it, though, because it does. I don't think it changes the dollar amount enough to, I'm sure they weighed it out. I don't think it changed the dollar amount enough to outweigh the benefit of him being up now.
Right. And, the other key thing I think that we ought to clarify in this discussion is this is all just about exactly when and how much he gets paid, because free agency, that bar passes like a couple weeks into the season, because he's if he never goes back down to the minors, he would be a free agent after 2031, I believe. Is that correct?
Let's see, 26, 27, 28, 30, 30. Well, yeah.
31. Yeah. So he's technically, he would be under contract a year longer than Bobby, theoretically, because he's got his first opt out after 2030.
It'll be 2 CBAs from now before he's.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. So, this is all just a matter of, and again, like, it matters for us fans from the standpoint of it theoretically could get a little harder to build a team around them. But then, as you said, like, arbitration is still so cost controlled that I just don't see it as that prohibitive. So let's talk about it from the other standpoints of, whether you're doing it to try to avoid the Super 2 because it doesn't initially work out, whether it's he really struggles and because of that and other things, the team doesn't turn it around this year. Yeah, turn it around. They're 2 games above 500, but they are not a current playoff team. They would not be in the playoffs if the season ended today. So let's just extrapolate a little bit. Like, Brady Singer came up during the COVID year. He stayed up all that year. Then they sent him down. I don't remember what point of the year it was, but sometime in 21, and he came back and had.
He was up in 21. It was in the 22 season, because remember he started.
And then he came back and was really good.
He started. Yeah, that's. They sent him down to stretch out, and then came back, but he was down long enough to get an extra year.
That's what it was. Yeah, and then he had probably his career. Well, 22 and last year were both really good, but that might have still been his best year once he returned in 22. And then he had a bad year in 23, yada, yada. So, but if Caglione doesn't hit the ground, if he has more of, let's say, a Mike Moustakas start to his career, I always think, people are a little more reluctant to send guys who were top prospects down. This is obviously it's a risk that they're taking partly out of desperation because they see this team and they see this pitching staff. Is this, I assume the sending him back down discussion probably wouldn't, you probably got to give that this full 2025 season before you even entertain those sorts of things, right? Like, when do you think you might have to reverse course if this doesn't work out?
Well, I mean, it's context dependent. So, if he goes out there and in the first 2 weeks is one for, what do they play, 12 games? So one for 42.
40. Yeah.
I mean, that's a different conversation. But I think typical struggles, he's probably up all year. Unless I think the caveat there is I think the mental side is much more important to them right now. If he's struggling and looks like he's struggling, he might go back to AAA. But I don't see a whole lot of path for that unless he just starts getting destroyed by changeups down. Because the reality is he has such great plate coverage and he is so powerful that he is I hate this term, but it's actually kind of true with him. He's going to run into home runs. I mean,
Right.
he's going to hit home runs. I wrote this morning. If he gets 400 plate appearances, that could 102 games, that would make sense.
Yeah.
Gonna hit 18 home runs.
Yeah.
He just is, because he's. I don't know if you saw they reposted this from spring training, but Vinny Pasquantino gave the spring breakout prospect report for him back in March, and I think it was Pipeline just reposted on Twitter that he talked about how he can hit a ball and he goes over the wall, and it's true because he's so big and strong and powerful. He's going to hit some home runs, and I think that you can make an argument that this lineup almost, I don't know, they don't need a guy to hit 180, but they need a guy who can hit 18 home runs in 100 games. They need a guy who can hit 22 home runs in 100 games because they don't have anybody who can hit a home run right now. Bobby Witt's not hitting home runs. I mean, he did on Friday, but Vinny Pasquantino has hit a really good May. The power's gone. It's all singles. Salvador Perez has hit 4 home runs this year. Like, the guys you're counting on to hit home runs aren't hitting home runs. So you need anybody. And I think that there is value in him hitting 180 with 18 home runs the rest of the way because he's somebody who puts the ball over the wall. And so the question then becomes, if he's hitting 180, which I don't expect, to be honest, but if he's hitting 180 and hitting all those and hitting home runs, what's his mental state? And if he's okay mentally, if he's fine with that, great, you're fine, whatever. I mean, he's going to stay up and hit home runs, and you'll address those issues as the offseason progresses into next year. If that gets him down, then I think he would go down to AAA. And so I think that's where the questions would come in for me.
Let's talk about some best case scenarios. We've tried to pour a little dose of realism on it so far. I don't know what I should have looked at this because I might have missed an opportunity. Now, to be fair, I also did get an early 50-1 bet in on Chris Bubich to win the Cy Young back in April after a couple of really nice starts, and that's looking nice. So I won't beat myself up too much, but I'm curious what the odds would have been like for him to be Rookie of the Year. Back at the beginning of the season. Now I'm seeing odds that I just can't even justify. Like something like plus 1,300. I mean, it's
I saw 50-1 yesterday morning, and then it jumped to 13-1 when the news broke.
So it was literally just in the last 24 hours when the news broke. I guess because we didn't know when he'd be coming up. I mean, it's fair because who knows you got to have you have to be. I don't even know exactly how it all works. I know for the pitchers, it's 162 innings to qualify for the ERA title. And then for batters, it's a certain proportion of plate appearances.
3.1 plate appearances per team game.
Right. And you have to have that to be eligible for the Rookie of the Year voting. Isn't that correct?
No. There is a number. Well, is there a number? I don't think there is, actually.
Because maybe did Skeens not get there last year?
No,
yeah, that's true. So, it's an interesting dichotomy there because you want him to get enough plate appearances to be seriously considered, but we've also seen the last couple of years there's a trend of guys winning that award or making that level of impact by virtue of only spending a half 2/3 of a season up. You think we talked about all the guys that have debuted, and of course there's guys from prior drafts who've debuted this year too, but none of the guys like Cam Smith, Kurtz just came up, so who knows what he'll do, but it does seem to be a somewhat open race. You think he should be the betting favorite at this point for the award?
I think it would be difficult to be the betting favorite over like Jacob Wilson, who I don't know.
That's true. Yep. There you go.
But he's hitting 357. I mean, not much power, but he's got a 158 weighted runs created plus. But if you look at the other rookies, and a lot of them have a head start. I mean, Cam Smith has 46 games, but he's got a 110 weighted runs created plus. The numbers aren't impressive, but he's been okay. Jake Magnum from the Rays, he's only played 24 games, but he's got a 123. Yeah, I don't know. I think Caglione could probably pass him. You look at the pitching side, Shane Smith with the White Sox. I don't see that holding on. Gosh, I don't even know. Noah Cameron might be one of his bigger competitors.
That's true.
Yeah, I think that it would be, Jacob will. But the other thing too, Christian Campbell was the runaway rookie of the year a month ago, and he is no longer that. So I don't.
Yeah.
It changes really fast with these guys. I think Wilson makes so much contact that he's going to get on. He's going to get some hits, and the average I think is going to be flashy for him, especially the park he plays in. That's a great park to hit in. But I'm looking at this list. Yeah, he could jump in pretty easily. I don't know that he should be the favorite, but 13-1, that seems about right to me. Those are not that long of odds.
No.
Yeah.
Certainly short enough that I was just like, man, because 50-1 on Bubic, I was like, man, I mean, the Royals had two guys. Well, I guess Reagan's might have been semi-expected, but they had two guys kind of come out of nowhere last year. Why not do it again? And I'm feeling pretty good about it right now. Now, it doesn't help when he takes 1-0 losses on wild pitches. Not that I would hope that's not too relevant in the Cy Young vote anymore, but it can't help.
That kind of started to not be relevant with Zach Greinke.
That's true. Yeah. No, it's not that relevant.
And the next year it was Felix Hernandez won it with 12 wins. So
yeah.
I think they stopped paying that close attention, but
well, his ERA still went down yesterday, so that does help. That definitely helps.
Exactly. But if you really want, get some money on Cameron for Cy Young because he's at 105. So no,
for Cy Young or Rookie of the Year.
I said Cy Young. I meant it.
Oh wow,
not really. I don't really mean it.
I wonder what his Rookie of the Year odds now. Yeah, you're gonna have me checking this. Know. All right. Well, the betting segment brought to you by David Lesky here on the Calling It How I See It pod. Hey, let's talk a bit about what they did to get Cags up here. It was one of the possibilities because it was a guy with an option. But I would say, if there was three potential doors, I don't even know if there might have been more than three. I think the most obvious one was Michael Massey going down. Then some people thought Rave, who hasn't looked that impressive, might go down. Blanco had options, but Canna could also be released. So I don't know. There was only three, but it would have been one of the last projected guys that they would have sent down in most people's minds, I think, to option Blanco down. Now, he certainly hasn't looked right since returning from his Achilles issues. He's gotten caught stealing bases. He hasn't done much with the bat. Is that just a matter of getting Omaha another outfielder? Like, what do you think went on there?
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't been good. He hasn't had a lot of opportunity. Yeah. 3 steals in 5 attempts? That's not good.
No.
He doesn't. He hasn't run enough to have a sprint speed this year.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. Somebody in baseball StatCast land knows, but it's not public. But from the eye test, he looks slower. And why wouldn't he? That's not surprising. He had an Achilles injury in spring training. He came back. He had it again. He's come back. He doesn't look as explosive. And he doesn't provide a great defensive profile. They don't like him in the outfield. They don't play him there very often. His bat is, the numbers have actually been okay, but a lot of that's like last year a lot of it was one game that provided. I mean, he had 4 homers and 13 RBIs last year, and two homers and 7 RBIs were in one game. I mean, that, he's not a great offensive player either. His value is on the bases, and if he's not that fast, well, there's not value. What I found really interesting, John Rave does have a sprint speed, and it is on par with, a little bit slower, but on par with Blanco's sprint speed from last year. That's not to say he's as good of a base stealer, because Blanco was a great base stealer last year. I mean, he stole, what was he? It was 31 for 38, and like 4 of those caught stealings were pickoffs, which are frustrating, yes, but still. But Rave can kind of play the role that Blanco was supposed to play, and you feel better about him defensively. Okay, I think it makes sense. Plus, who are you probably coming in for? I mean, Caglione potentially for running and or defense, but like if you want to platoon him and Nick Lofton, okay, well, now you got a lefty and a righty. That makes a lot of sense. If you, Drew Waters, I guess, is better from the left side, so maybe that's not the right way, but it's nice to have that lefty bat as well. I think it kind of makes sense to keep Rave over Blanco. The only thing that doesn't is it's hard to see Rave playing regularly now with Caglione up, and if you want Rave playing every day, okay, that makes more sense. But also, the Royals have told us without telling us that they don't think much of John Rave. I mean, he was in the minors for 3 years, and AAA for this is his third year. He was passed over in the Rule 5 by every team twice. The
Yep.
Royals passed him over a lot. I mean, they clearly don't see him as a linchpin of this team. So
Right.
I don't know that they care if he plays 2 days a week. And I think he fits that role better than Blanco right now.
Makes sense. I honestly had not. I knew he had. Obviously he was the clamorings to call him up for what he was doing with the bat down in Omaha. But I'd heard that his speed and defense were. I had been hearing that like, well, hey, maybe he's not a everyday player, but he could be a decent bench bat. And I'm like, or a bench player in general. I'm like, well, I mean, we'll see what the metrics show. But hey, you just outlined him, and he defensively does seem to be shining through. So it makes a lot of sense. But is there some kind of Michael Massey move coming? Because I mean, Jonathan India is now getting the majority of the reps at second base. Massey's already not been an everyday player. You already kind of talked about how Raven Waters are going to be the ones mixing and matching with Caglione in the outfield. You also have Lofton and Cannon from the right side. I mean, Michael Massey's not. He can't play other infield positions, so he's not a utility player. I mean, there has to be some sort of move for him coming out, even if it's get Tyler Tolbert back up here because he can play multiple positions. We don't know if he might be basically Terrence Gore. He might not really be able to field or hit at the major league level, but they've put him in a couple different spots. I mean, there has to be Michael Massey's going to need some sort of reset button push, right? Like even if it's all separate from the Caglione thing, there has to be something coming there, right?
I would assume so. And one thing that I'll say, the Royals made a move today. You mentioned this earlier. It's an off day for every single team in the organization. Well, I think the complex league is playing, but every full season team in the organization is off today.
Yeah, minor leagues are always off Monday. Yeah.
Right. And so they didn't need to make this move today.
Nope.
We knew it was coming because it was announced last night because Jack Caglione is that big of a prospect. My question, I think I know the answer to this. I'll let people decide if they can surmise it. I wonder a little bit if the Royals wanted to let it leak because people were frustrated with the series and the game.
Yeah.
What better way to take a mad fan base to a glad fan base than to announce the top prospect coming up? And so it kind of gets to the point. Okay, we got to make this move today. Okay, that doesn't mean they won't make a move tomorrow.
Right.
Like it's not over. It's not like, oh, well, they made their move for the week. No, they can do it tomorrow. And the other side of it, the Royals are not stupid. The marketing department's not stupid. You're not going to get traction on a move that is Dairon Blanco and Michael Massey to AAA, Tyler Tolbert and Jack Caglione brought up. No, the move is Jack Caglione for Dairon Blanco. Any other move, it needs to be separate because that's from a business standpoint, especially if they played today, sure, you have to do it all at once. They don't. You can separate them and be a little bit more marketing savvy. I'm not saying there will be a move tomorrow. I'm just saying that the fact that there doesn't mean that there won't be. And I think Tolbert does make a lot of sense. I think Cam Devaney makes some sense. There's a level of, well, he won't get to play very often because India is playing second and Garcia is playing third, which, by the way, we don't know Garcia's injury extent at this point. It seems like it's nothing. Nothing can be something sometimes. They might be waiting to get some results on Garcia to determine who they're bringing up if they're sending Massey down. Maybe if Garcia is fine and Tolbert, if he's not, it's Devaney. And if it is Devaney, by the way, they need to make a 40-man move because Caglione fills the 40-man roster.
Yep.
Not that there aren't options. I mean, there's 60-day IL options that are really easy, but there are a lot of moving parts here that they may not know the answer to yet, and we definitely don't know the answer. So, I think Massey has to go to AAA. He's flailing. This is not. They're not doing him favors, and I think that Michael Massey can be a part of a solution down the road. I don't think a long-term solution, but he was a legitimately good hitter last year. Legitimately above average, let's say. Maybe not good. But he hit at the top of the lineup in the playoffs and hit well. I mean, he was solid down the stretch. He had some power. He's really good second base defense. I think there's a spot for Michael Massey on a winning team. But I don't think there's a spot for Michael Massey right now. It will not surprise me if tomorrow at, I don't know, 2:14, we see a notification from the Royals. Michael Massey has been sent down blank is up. And I think your two options are Tolbert and Devaney mostly. Um, I might be missing somebody because it's easy to do, but those make the most sense. But yeah, I don't know how you keep him on the roster anymore at this point. Let him go back to AAA and reset because he's shown he can be a productive big leaguer. Just let him get down and clear his head.
Last thing here before we let you go, we're talking to David Lesky here on the Calling How I See It Sports Pod before he hops over and gets on Sports Radio 810 with my guy Soren Petro. Tell him hey, from me, David. I used to work for him. I'm sure you've heard that. Hey, what needs to happen in 2025? For us to look back on this, in a favorable light, because there's so many different ways that this could go. Like, let's not pretend that even if Jack Caglione, if Jack Caglione does get Rookie of the Year votes, obviously it's going to change the complexion of this offense, but it doesn't fix the lineup. There's going to be multiple other things that guys they're going to need to improve and such. So there's all sorts of pathways this could go. He could be really good, and the pitching staff could falter a little bit. If Vinny and especially Salvi don't get it turned around, it still might not be enough. What do you think needs to happen both from like his performance perspective and from the team's perspective for us to look back on this favorably at the end of the season?
I think they have to not crater. Honestly, I don't think it takes that much for it to be a positive situation. I think if they crater and you end up having to spend an extra few million on Caglione down the road, it probably looks bad in hindsight. But ultimately, it's one of those things. It's not my money. It's not your money. It's their money.
Yep.
It's there are the realities of the situation where they have a budget, and I understand the idea. It's not my money, but it's also the team that I follow and root for. And if they have a budget, then every dollar they spend here, they can't spend there. So there is that aspect of it. But I think ultimately they have to not crater. He has to not crater. And actually, that's not even true because if he craters, he's going back and it doesn't matter.
Right.
I think he has to just not be bad, good enough to stay, but bad enough to be bad. And that's a really fine line. I don't think there's a whole lot of downside here, at least for 2025. And ultimately, I think you put that bat in the middle of the lineup, and it doesn't. Even if he's not great, which there's a pretty good chance he's not great, guys. Let's be real here. I think he can be good. I think he could be great. I think you could. Are you going to look at? Is he going to be 2019 Yordan Alvarez? I don't know. 2013 Yasiel Puig, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at guys with about 100 games played. Johnny Gomes in 2005, that'd be cool. He was really good for the Devil Rays. That's how long ago that was.
What about Johnny Gomes in 2015?
Yeah, if he's Johnny Gomes in 2015, that means they're winning a World Series. So I'll take that.
That's
too.
right. That's right.
But he adds an element to the lineup that they don't have. And again, no matter what he does, he's going to hit the ball over the wall a few times. And that's something they don't have right now. So it changes the complexion of the lineup, if nothing else. I think that there are concerns about the swing rate and the chase rate and all that. I think that there's they're a little bit overblown by some and a little bit under thought out by others. But it's hard to see this being a bad thing long term, at least for 2025. I guess that's short term. But I just don't think it's. I don't think that there's a world where this is a huge problem in any way.
Real quick, what do you think they ought to do as far as the lineup goes? Ned Yost was he batted Ryan Braun third in his first ever game in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
I think Hosmer, might have hit sixth for like a week or two, but then he was in the 3 spot. And he's, I'm a little, everybody's going like this, this is the ideal order. I've seen everything from Cag's got to bat ahead of Witt because he's going to see the most good pitches because Witt's the proven guy to he needs to bat behind Witt because Vinny's not driving in the runs. And, then there's the debates on how much the right-left balance, matters. What do you think's the ideal either spot for him in the lineup or like maybe the more accurate way to put it is like the way for him and us as fans to think about his role? Because of course his strength and his role is to hit homers and hit for power, but he's obviously his role is a run producer. So where do you think he fits in all that?
Well, I think you just alternate him and Bobby 1, 2, just go all the way down the lineup, just hit those two only. No,
that'd be
never that. No, ultimately I think he starts hitting sixth. Well, let me backtrack on that. If Garcia is healthy, I think you see India, Witt, Pasquantino, Perez, Garcia, Caglione tomorrow night. If Garcia's out of the lineup, I'm guessing he's hitting fifth. I could see them maybe putting Waters there just to take a little pressure off him, but ultimately 5 or 6, what's the difference? I know that there is a difference, but come on, let's just whatever. It would not be surprising if I could see down the road if they start to shift some things where, okay, Caglione's now hitting third, and maybe it's Caglione, Pasquantino, Perez, Garcia. I don't know. Maybe that just shifts everybody down one. Maybe Perez stays at fourth. That's an issue. Honestly, he needs to hit.
Garcia needs to surpass him, honestly, in terms of that righty balance.
If it was me, I would go. I would flip Garcia and Perez right now, and potentially then Caglione and Perez down the road. But that's not what they're going to do. So we can talk about it all day, but it's not going to change anything. But I think he probably hits sixth tomorrow, assuming Garcia is healthy. I do wonder if he'd hit fifth if Garcia is still out tomorrow. But they're very cognizant of pressure, which I think they're, again, similar to a lot of things. Probably a little more than they should be, but a lot of people are a little bit less aware of it than they should be. So the answer is probably like everything somewhere in the middle. But the Royals are acutely aware of that. So I would bet you don't see him in the top 4. That's for sure.
That's David Lesky of Inside the Crown joining us here before he hops on Sports Radio 810. David, great stuff, man. Let's talk again in a couple weeks, and hopefully we got a bunch of home runs to talk about.
Fingers crossed, man. Thank you for having me.
David Lesky on the Calling It How I See It Sports Pod.